cucumbers. So this is one of my favorite data science stories. You might have come across it before. There's a guy who's in Japan who's a cucumber farmer, and one of the things that happens when you're a cucumber farmer, you want to sell your cucumbers to the supermarket or wherever, but you can't just go there with a truckload of cucumbers. You need to have pre-categorized them, pre-sorted them. So it turns out that cucumbers, come in different qualities depending on how straight. People like a nice straight cucumber with a little bit of without too much of a curve on it. So and people also worry about the size of their cucumbers. So that's kind of what you can see on the left-hand side. The top group are the very good cucumbers, arranged by size, very large, and so forth. And then in the middle, you've kind of got the slightly bent ones, not such good quality, and right down the bottom, you've got the very crooked cucumbers that no one likes. But it's kind of a time-consuming job to go through all these cucumbers and categorize things like that. So this guy thought, well, why can't I let the computer do the categorization for me? So the idea is, I guess you have a conveyor belt or something and a camera over the top, and it looks at the cucumbers as they go underneath, and it says, okay, I recognize that sort of cucumber. That's a class 2L, so put it in that bin, or I see it's a class BM, so you put it in the other bin, or whatever. So the reason I like that story, there's a couple of reasons I like that story so much. I used to be long time ago, I used to work as a data scientist for a big supermarket, and it turns out cucumbers were their biggest selling product, individual product. But also it kind of illustrates one of the central things that I wanted to talk about in this webinar, which was how to use data science, in your business. But it's all about trying to recognize the sorts of things that data science might be useful for, the sort of things that AI and machine learning might be good candidates for, and how to kind of go about developing those sorts of ideas. So it's kind of, and this kind of really illustrates a really nice solution. So we've got someone with a clear problem. They need to categorize their cucumbers. It's a doable thing. You can teach a human how to categorize cucumbers by looking at them. So it's the sort of thing that you might expect a computer could learn to do. And it's got a clear value, because it turns out, you're having to pay somebody to go and do that sort of categorization is expensive, very time consuming. There's kind of variable quality. Some people might be better cucumber categorizers than others, but this way you've got a kind of a nice automated system. It's a job that people don't like doing either. The computer doesn't get bored, whereas the humans do. And so that's kind of a really good way of identifying a kind of a good candidate problem that you could use data science or AI or machine learning to tackle. In that particular case, it's quite an interesting one. He needed 7,000 images. He got his mum, I think, to take photos of 7,000 cucumbers, label all of those photos, and then he fed them into the computer and kind of learnt an algorithm, built a little application for himself that would do that categorization automatically. So, this is the sort of problem that, in my business, I run a kind of a data science consultancy where we're data scientists for hire. And one of the things we often have to do is we have to go into, speak to companies, and they often have lots and lots of data, but they just don't really know what to do with it or know how to kind of extract the most value from it. They don't really know where to start. So a couple of good things to think about are tasks that are, that take a long time or they're repetitive. things that are, things that are error prone. So hopefully the computer will, they're not infallible, but hopefully they're at least a bit more consistent. And things that have a real value to you. So one of a really good example of a task that I tackled in our business was a company who had lots and lots of documents, so many documents they couldn't possibly manually sort through them and look through them. This is all free text stuff. So what they were interested in doing was finding documents that were particularly relevant in certain circumstances. And that was quite a nice machine learning sort of thing. A computer can go through, scan through all of these documents really, really quickly, and kind of figure out the sorts of patterns that are kind of relevant in a specific kind of context. That's not always so identifying a problem like that is really quite an important place to get going. So what other questions do you need to ask? So when looking through data, it's not always clear that there's the right information in there. It's not always clear whether you have enough data. These are the sort of questions, once we're getting a bit deeper into our problem, we start asking, is there information? Can you use it? What sort of things can I already do with what I've got? And is it worth it? These are all, really, really, really important sorts of things that it's worth thinking about. So I can give you another example. I was working with a company that they were like a bicycle retailer, and they had all sorts of different clients. So some of their clients were parents buying their children, bikes that they could go and ride around the street on or ride around their backyard. Other clients were more kind of, the sort of extreme sports people doing mountain bike stuff. Others, were kind of more road racers. So they had very, very different customers. A lot of them were actually other retailers. So getting a kind of an idea about the sorts of different categories of customers was really valuable to them. When another customer wanted to use a similar approach, again, these were more of a ski shop, ski rental sort of a place. They thought it would be valuable to do the same thing, but it turns out that their client base wasn't quite so quite as diverse as the bicycle rental place. So in that case, they had lots and lots of data, but the information wasn't there. So in that particular case, it's not clear that first of all that you could use the data to do to solve that particular problem, but more importantly, there wasn't really the value there. The value, and what's the point in actually solving that problem? So for the cucumber guy, it's quite clear what the value is. It saves time, it saves effort. For the document classification, it was kind of a similar thing. There were so many documents, you couldn't possibly have a human go through them all, in a reasonable amount of time. And so therefore, in order to find the relevant document, you can't actually find the relevant documents unless you have some sort of automated thing. For this bicycle retailer, for them, it was, really about how do they engage with their customers, who are the people you should give offers to. If they're retailers, you might want to think about, doing bulk stuff, or if they're, if you think then, obviously waiting for Christmas and stuff like that, that might be important. Whereas, the extreme sports people possibly they're hanging out for the sales or something like that. This is the important sort of information that's buried within the data. Whereas, for the ski rental people, digging down on that sort of, categorizing the sort of customers in that sort of way wasn't quite so useful. Maybe there's other questions that they could ask, something more to do with, time of year or something like that. I don't know. So really being driven by what's the value, what's the value to the business, what's the value to you, to the end user, for solving these problems. One of the things that comes up when talking about machine learning stuff and AI is that there's lots and lots of very, very powerful techniques out there. So the idea that you can just show a computer a photo and it automatically identifies stuff in there. The cucumber's a nice example because it's silly, but actually these can do lots of stuff. Lots of really impressive things like understanding what's in a video automatically, which YouTube does, or your phone will sort of pick out faces in the photos that you take. And I think a lot of people can kind of be a little bit intimidated by that. But actually, there's a lot of value in actually really, really simple approaches, simple things. And if you've managed to find the right sort of question, a question where you have a clearly identified problem and clearly identified what the value in solving that problem is, then often you can find quite simple solutions. So another retail example that I dealt with was working for a retailer, and one of their suppliers wanted to identify big families, large households, customers who had large households because they wanted to offer some sort of discount or some sort of offer to them. And we were looking at their shopping histories and using a bit of survey data, wanted to kind of see if you could find some patterns that would enable you to sort of find these families. So it turns out that it's actually, by looking at sort of how much refrigerator stuff people buy every week, you can do a really quite an accurate estimate of how big the household size is. So you don't need, in this particular case, you don't always need these highly complicated models. So you don't need to kind of be quite so intimidated by neural networks and stuff like that. Actually, sometimes you can start simple and then later on build up, add more complicated logic, more sophisticated software and that sort of thing. But of course, by the time you're doing that, you probably will be able to justify it. You're going to say, well, we're going to spend 6 months building this big, neural network approach to something, because we know that, we need this extra bit of accuracy, because the accuracy we have isn't enough. So by the time you're actually investing and spending all that time and money into developing this big solution, you kind of already know what to expect. It's not such an unknown quantity. And you kind of know the risks. You know what you're going to get. You know what it's going to cost. I think that can be really important for businesses starting out on their kind of machine learning or AI journey. It all seems very vague and mysterious to start with, but we can certainly find a way to begin. At the beginning of finding simple solutions that can deliver real value for you. And I'll discuss some pitfalls to avoid. Here's another one of this is my second favorite data science story. So this teenage girl was sent some promotional material from Target about her. Since she was pregnant, the problem was she hadn't told her family that she was pregnant. So they kind of let the cat out of the bag for her. So a bit unfortunate. It's an interesting one. I've actually been in a room a few times where we've sort of discussed whether this was a sensible thing to do to sort of identify people we think were pregnant, and then to sort of offer, why don't you go and buy your baby stuff from, here's some, and usually people have decided that it probably isn't a great idea, because, if you get it wrong, or, if something should go wrong, maybe that's not necessarily a nice thing to have done. But actually there's, there are actually a whole bunch of other pitfalls that commonly come up and are worth thinking about if you're sort of going down the path of building, machine learning solutions, or AI, or data science stuff. So a couple that happen a lot are first of all, not focusing on the things that I've been talking about, which are having a sort of a very clearly defined problem that you're trying to solve, and not understanding what the value of solving it is. They're kind of those things. I think if you've gotten them right, they can steer you away from trouble. So one of the things that happens is that people kind of fall in love with some of the things that they're working on, some of the solutions. Wouldn't it be cool if we could, go and automate some particular thing, and we could use all this, all of this image recognition, or stuff like that, and it's going to be amazing. We're gonna derive all of this value, but actually, often what happens is you spend a lot of time and energy developing it, and a lot of money developing this stuff, but actually it doesn't really have a clear purpose. It doesn't have a clear use case. And so in the end, you've kind of wasted all that effort, and it ends up going nowhere. So another really important one is being quite vague about what the problem is, and that can be hard, because people often, it doesn't necessarily feel vague at the start. One thing that often happens to me when I go in to talk to companies is they sort of, they've heard a lot about using data to make decisions, to make decisions about their company. And they say, well, what we want to do is we want to have a tool which tells us where our business is performing badly, and tell us how to fix it. The problem is that could mean all sorts of different things, and it's probably quite context dependent, right? So a less specific question to ask would be, can we sort of do benchmarking, compare our business to similar businesses, or something like that, right? It's taken a kind of a vague concept and made it more concrete, and that's the sort of thing that these algorithms, that AI, machine learning is quite good at kind of narrowing down and finding those solutions. The more vague exploratory stuff, not so much. It can take a lot more effort, and the results are quite variable. So that's something to steer clear of. It's certainly worth finding a nice, clear example, clear with clearly value. So really, I mean, I think to sum it all up, it's really all about finding the sorts of problems that are repetitive, or that require looking into very, very large quantities of data, things that have a very, very clearly defined purpose, and that you have a sort of a very clear idea of what the value is. And I think once you can kind of answer those sorts of questions, then you're in a kind of quite a safe place to begin using these tools without necessarily having to worry so much about the negative consequences that could come up. So that takes me to the end of the presentation. If there's any questions or anyone would like to discuss anything, I'm certainly more than happy to. So let me know. And thanks very much for coming. No problem. Is it possible to get a recording of this presentation? I think it probably is. I'll have to check whether it all worked properly. I don't know what I guess I could.
I've recorded it on Loom, so I hope it will work fine. And then there might be Demio might have recorded as well. So we'll follow up with everyone if we have the recording and let you know.
Thanks for that, Matt. Oh, no problem. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to get a hold of us. I think you should have our contact information, but I'm Matt at datamettle.com and Jeremy is Jeremy at datamettle.com. So nice and easy. But yeah, thank you very much for attending and hope to talk to you all soon.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Bye.
See you guys.